Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. We've got one of our new sponsors in NevGold on today. As always with sponsors, they pay me to help put out content to get the story out. So it's to their benefit, and it also is to the benefit of my audience because they make the work that I do on my reporting on the sector and companies that I follow happen. So I wanted to thank them for that. And Brandon and Derek, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Allan.
So you guys are in the camp near Hercules Metals now. They've changed their name from Hercules Metals to Hercules Silver to Hercules Metals. And since they made their big discovery, it's been quite a staking rush going on in the area. And I was quite encouraged to see some of the claim maps that basically Barrick has covered everything in between Hercules and you guys. And then you've got your big claim block down about, 20 kilometers from the main Hercules area. And then they've got some ground beside you guys as well. So the staking has really heated up and you guys are well positioned.
Yeah, we definitely picked up on that as we were doing our staking. It's always tough to know which crews are out there and where they're from, but it was pretty clear there were some large companies right out of the gates that were picking up as much ground as possible. And I think fortunately enough for us, we were the first mover and we grabbed what were the best rocks, or what we thought were the best rocks. And that's where I think the news release this morning really touches on why we're so excited about Zeus.
I think that it kind of confirms your analysis of the rocks that, I did notice that it doesn't look like a lot has been staked to the north of Hercules. It's all coming down to the south, which kind of confirms what your analysis of where the right rocks are.
Exactly. And I think, based on the work we've done, and obviously, as I mentioned in a past interview, we worked very closely with the Idaho Geological Survey even before staking because of our other resource stage oxide heap leach gold project at Nutmeg Mountain. We sort of had a leg up in terms of where we thought we would see the right geological signatures. So that's really where we paid attention right out of the gates. And I think, as I mentioned, we picked up some of or the most strategic ground in this emerging Hercules copper trend. And as you touched on, the belt is pretty much spoken for now with other groups like Barrick, Rio Tinto. Obviously, Hercules has done more. So it's, some very good company and some very large companies to be working next to.
So when you guys announced your project, some things stood out to me immediately is that there is historical mining there. And those guys, when they were doing that mining, that was the hardest work. So it can often be a good indicator of where to go, where to look. And so there was historical mining and then the right geology, the right rocks that are very similar to the Hercules project, and then structures. And so, I could tell right away that you guys weren't just staking ground for the sake of having ground on the map. There you go. There it shows the rock packages that are associated. And then you went in there and did a bunch of sampling. And you got some great results there of my two favorite metals, gold and copper. So why don't you give them show everybody what those results look like?
Yeah, I think just quickly, we were talking about the trend. So here's the Hercules copper trend here. And as you can see, that Hercules copper porphyry discovery was up here at the Hercules project. We focused around their other project called Mineral. We thought this was the next best part of the trend. As Allan mentioned, there was historical production in what was called this mineral district. And obviously Hercules has their mineral project, which we've effectively surrounded to the north, east, and south. And Allan, as you just touched on, and Derek, I'll hand it off to you, but it's all about the rocks, it's all about the structures and having the right units and the right environment. And I think that's exactly what we have at Zeus. And Derek, I think touch on that first and foremost, because I think it's the
Before
most
you
important.
do,
That's
folks, you see that 20-kilometer line there? Basically, all of that is now staked by Barrick
exactly.
on
And
either side of
even
that
so,
line.
yeah, so Alan, this 20 kilometers, and then I'll flip back to the other figure. Also between Zeus and Bayhorse has
Oh,
also been staked by Barrick.
okay.
So they have pretty much taken this entire part of the prospective belt. They were very aggressive and very quick. And I know they've already started working the ground. We just spent about a month down in Idaho with our team, and we saw a lot of their geologists throughout our time down there.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
the district activity is definitely heating up, and it should be a very positive summer for all the different projects and companies.
Perfect. You were, sorry, I interrupted. You were gonna
No,
talk.
no worries. I just thought painting the picture, the context of, Hercules is up here. There's that 20 kilometers, which, as you just touched on, Barrick has obviously picked up a lot of that ground, and then we've got our Zeus project. But really, the focus of us was because of having the right geological units, and that's really what drove our staking. But subsequent, and as we were staking, we were also picking up samples, and that was really the genesis of today's news release. So maybe Derek, hand it off to you, and then touch on the geology first, and we can speak about some of the results thereafter.
Yeah, sure. So the area that we staked the Zeus project really stood out from a geology standpoint for a couple reasons. I think one of the most important things to know about this area is a lot of the ground that's been staked is covered by this kind of light tan unit you can see as most of the map. Those are post-mineral basalts. They're much younger. They're going to cover any kind of mineralization that's out there. And so when we started looking in this area, we saw that as kind of a different challenge. You can imagine basalts are very magnetic, so that's going to present some challenges from a geophysics standpoint. And so we really weren't interested in trying to approach those areas, though I do think from a mineralization standpoint, there is good potential. You've just got a significant amount of cover rocks you got to see through. So moving on to that, we arrived at the Zeus area because it really had all the other items you look
Eric,
for.
basically where Hercules is and you guys are, the rocks outcrop, so you can see what
Exactly.
you're chasing. You don't have cover to worry about.
Exactly. You have those erosional windows through the basalt, so you already know you're in the right rock package. And that's what we were looking for. You can see the darker brown units are the Triassic age plutons, the intrusives. That's a key component. Those are the source of the copper. Those are the copper porphyry units. Above that, you have the purple units. Those are the Huntington Formation. That's where they're actually intercepting the copper mineralization up at the Hercules project. So we knew we needed a significant package of those rocks because those are going to be the potential host. And then above that, you have these blue and green rocks. Those are cover rocks. So those are the units that Hercules drilled through and found that blind porphyry beneath. And so those were all the key components for us. You've got all of those on our project. And then we also see the same types of faultings. You have this major northeast striking fault called the Bayhorse Thrust Fault that comes right through our property, also strikes right through Hercules property. And so really this checked all the boxes. Same rocks, same structural fabric, and it's an erosional window where we don't have to wonder what's going on beneath those post-mineral units. And so after that,
I noticed that those red dots, folks, are the historical mining. And if you look at the concentration of the historical mining on Hercules project, it's the same story down where Zeus is.
yeah, and that's a key component. There is historic high-grade silver and copper production in both districts, and we really considered that another key component. They're down in the mineral district where Zeus is located. There were actually two different smelters operating back in the 1800s. But really after that, there wasn't much work done. There was a few kind of sporadic, kind of 1 to 2 year programs here and there by a few other companies, but that was another component to us. This is an area that really hasn't seen a lot of modern exploration. As far as we know, none of the Zeus property has been drilled by anyone. And so we considered that another key opportunity there. And then once we got on the ground, we were staking the claims starting last year. And I can say on the very first day, I started finding copper mineralization. Me and one of the other senior geologists were out there. We were probably kind of halfway through the day. We found our first example of malachite just in a float sample at the kind of northern end of the property. And so that was really kind of the key component of, hey, okay, we're starting to see all the actual on the ground indications that there is a copper system here. And so that's really what this news release is out, is the sampling that we've done as we've done the claim staking. So I don't consider this by any means comprehensive. It's not been really particularly systematic, even in terms of we're just taking samples as we come upon them while we were staking the claims. But we've gotten those results back, and we're really happy with what we're seeing with this kind of first pass sampling.
Yeah, I saw 1.2%, 1.3, 0.91, 86, 103, and nice kicks of gold and silver as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, what stands out is what's interesting is we're seeing those plus 1% kind of copper grades, which is what you need to really see in terms of showing you have a strong copper system. And then we're also getting some nice indications that there's gold there. You can see the best sample we've taken to date is 8 grams gold. We've got another sample that's running 1 gram of gold, and then some nice silver numbers, in that kind of 20 to up over 100 grams silver as well. And so I think that really stands out. We're seeing the kind of grades you really want to expect to show you've got a strong system. The other thing that's really critical to me is you're seeing it throughout the property. And so those are the two key things to me. When you look at these systems, you always think with porphyries, one, you've got typically they occur in clusters. So you want to think in terms of, are there multiple intrusive centers with copper associated with them? But then also two, big deposits have big footprints. And that's what I think is really exciting, that what we've been seeing as we've done this sampling to date is you can see we've established multiple target areas throughout the property. All of those have significant copper, gold, or silver grades associated with them. And so really now we're arriving at, we need to start doing those next steps of exploration. So soil sampling, geophysics, to really define the drill targets. But I think it's really encouraging to see we're seeing very widespread copper numbers with this kind of first pass sampling.
I noticed on that map that it looks like they're associated with structures as well.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing that we don't have a good understanding yet, because this has been just kind of a sample as we find things while we're doing the claim staking. The next step is, and our previous press release was about the geologic compilation that we put out. We're really in that phase now. We're doing that boots on the ground work of actually going out, checking the maps, confirming things. And I can say so far we've been very pleased with the work that's been done previously. Really does match what we're seeing on the ground, which is really encouraging.
Can you hold on that for just 1 second? I wanted to explain something to my audience. When the mineralizing fluids interact with the country rock, they will chemically alter that rock. And as you can see in that sample there's significant alteration associated with that mineralization. And I would imagine you've seen a fair bit of alteration there, Derek?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most encouraging things we've seen. This sample in particular is from the area called Thorn Springs. So this sample was 1.2% copper and over 8 grams gold. So, a very significant result in that way. This is down in kind of the southwestern portion of the Zeus project. And what's really interesting about this area, there was a PhD dissertation done in 1975 that actually mapped a porphyry alteration cell down here. So the kind of classic bullseye pattern of progression through the different alteration halos that you get with these porphyry systems. The interesting thing is there's no drilling down here. This is from a small prospect pit. This was just one of the samples we found right there. And so, this just shows how open this ground is you've got a map porphyry alteration cell. We're sampling at the surface, finding high grade copper and gold, and there's really, to our knowledge, been no exploration in this area.
And so, Derek earlier mentioned that big systems leave big footprints. And when you're talking about those footprints at the surface, alteration is what you're looking for as the footprint indicator. And then when you have mineralization associated with that in copper and gold, that's a very encouraging and tells you that you've got something there to roll your sleeves up on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, as you were saying, the red rusty looking rock is related to, that used to be pyrite. It's all been altered. You can see there's some green there in the middle. That's actually a mineral called malachite, which is a copper carbonate mineral, very common in these porphyry coppers, especially when they've been super gene enriched. You'll see this as one of the weathering products that happens with these things. And so we're really encouraged by this, is checking all the boxes and what you would expect to see with one of these big copper systems.
And I think another
confirm-
interesting point, we went back, Allan, and did some cross-referencing to late 21, early 22 in terms of some of the initial Hercules rock chip sampling from their porphyry target at the Hercules project. And a lot of the results assay wise came back very similar. So there was a lot of results around that 1% copper. And I think that's very encouraging that no project is a like for like, but effectively we are seeing a lot of similar signatures as what Hercules saw a year and a half prior to their initial drill holes with the rock chip sampling. So the roadmap's being identified. We understand what it is. And as Derek mentioned, the soils have started. We're starting to advance on that. We obviously need to do more surface geology work, but that leads to drill targeting, and we're going to be there in the next couple months. So it's very
Really?
encouraging how fast and rapid we're moving at
Right,
Zeus.
with drilling you're talking about.
We're having drill targets identified. Obviously, the drilling itself is subject to a number of things, but we will be arriving at drill targets over the coming months.
Well, it certainly is encouraging. You know, you guys sort of initially focused on the general geology, and then, you know, with the right structures, the right rocks and the historical mining. And now when you get on there and you start knocking some rocks around, you're seeing the alteration and the mineralization. That's quite exciting, that you're kind of confirming everything as you go. You looked ahead, then you went and confirmed it, and now you're doing that more property wide. But even these samples you've taken, it certainly shows widespread mineralization. That is quite exciting.
Yeah, no, I think they're very encouraging just in terms of the footprint itself. And I think the other interesting point, and it's always tough to put this in a news release, and it's not anything that's privy or confidential, but think about the weather, right? So Hercules' hole came out early October. By November, the snow started coming in. So real exposure of the rocks and geology, we knew where we liked, but having that full project wide area that was not under snow to be able to actually properly see the rocks, confirm some of the old historical work done on the project. I think over effectively since the start of May until today, we've had our full team down there for the last 2 months. So we've spent a lot of hours, days, weeks, and months so far in the field. And I think that's really given us a lot more confidence in our initial thinking. And it's been great to see. I think a lot of the historical work has been fantastic, but as you can see, there's a lot of uncovered opportunities to unlock. And that's really what we're focused on now.
Well, you know, one thing that I always kind of paid attention to is the geological work and the team. And what I try to establish early is the how thorough they're throwing the science at it. And part of that is from historical work, and then how you go about working on it when you have access to it. And Derek, I can tell, is one of those geological sleuths that I like, because he's quoting papers from the 1970s and stuff. So you've been not only honing over the project, Derek, you've also been looking at the literature and everything you can find out to help guide your work.
Yeah, Allan, I have to give kudos to Derek and our 2 other senior exploration geologists. There was a lot of hours at the desktop while it was winter period, really getting a handle on what's happened in this area, making the parallels with Hercules. But yeah, we've done a lot of that upfront work that I think many of the other groups in the district have given us kudos on since putting those news releases out.
You're one of those sleuths, Derek. You're trying to use all the tools you can.
Don't reinvent the wheel. If someone's already mapped it, you know, start with that, because I always look at it. It's probably not all right, but we know it's not all wrong either. And that's been a key thing that we've been doing the last month, is just really ground truthing, taking a few more samples as we come on them, and just confirming what's there. And then that's going to drive how we advance the project in terms of, okay, we know what work we believe, what already been done. What do we need to do to add to that? And some of that's new tools that are out there that, you know, previous explorationists didn't have. Some of it's just new ideas. So we're going to be applying both.
and then walking around, doing the old fashioned geology, walking around and looking down.
And that's part of the fun with this project. You know, as you're seeing, there's been a lot of academic work done on this over the last 40 years, but there really hasn't been much exploration work with that eye of economics saying, you know, how could there be a valuable mineral deposit here? And so that's really, I think, the fun thing. You know, it's relatively rare to find these kind of districts in the Western US. You know, most things have had a pretty hard look at this point. You know, it's fairly mature. And so it's nice and refreshing to come on an area where you can say, wow, there's 8 grams of gold and 1% copper outcropping and no drill holes for a mile probably or more kind of thing. So you know, that's a unique thing in this part of the world, and so it's pretty fun to work on it.
And is that part of the general feeling prior to the Hercules discovery that maybe this wasn't the right kind of rocks for porphyry discoveries, Derek? And
There's definitely those stories of, you know, the porphyry experts came out, had a look, didn't like some particular aspect of it, and you know, it didn't get the blessing essentially, and so it was kind of ignored for that. And so, you know, I think that's another thing. It just speaks to the you know, sometimes a new perspective can really change things. And so that's really the eye that we're bringing to things, is that, you know, we now know this district has porphyry potential. Hercules has proved that. Now it's the question of how many are there, how big are they, where's the best part of them?
but that, you know, that always kind of gives me a smile and makes me excited because in a regional perspective, that has happened a lot in my career, 30 years in the business. I've seen areas that weren't supposed to be prospective for something and proved to have mines there. And then even on a property-wide perspective, you know, there's a Newmont study that it's usually they compilated all the mines throughout the world, and it was usually the 7th or 8th company that, if there was a mine there, found that mine. And I think a lot of that goes to what you were saying about fresh eyes on something. So there was no fresh eyes until Hercules looking for porphyries in this area. And now you've got some fresh eyes looking at your project as well.
And bear in mind, they started looking at the silver system that was near surface.
Right.
And hence the name Hercules Silver, which is now being changed to Hercules Metals, which I think we were all expecting over the last little bit. But I think that's also an important factor. I mean, when you're looking at this district here of Western Idaho called Washington County, it was really only us and Hercules as the exploration or mining companies in this area. So I think it's also a bit of an Idaho factor, Allan. I think Idaho is now starting to really open up from a mining and exploration standpoint. I'd say there has been historically some permitting challenges there, but a lot of that's being rectified by how they're
because
managing
now
the state.
it's moved up in the
100%. And I think we've noticed that as well from our side. So I think there's been a lot of positive changes in Idaho that maybe certain parts were overlooked because of those external quantitative factors, right?
Yeah, because it's really moved up the list of mining friendly jurisdictions
Definitely.
rapidly.
And we feel that, especially in this county here, we've had a great experience with the BLM office. We've obviously had some discussions with the US Forest Service office, a lot of the local communities and individuals. Everyone is extremely supportive of exploration and potentially the next stages or what that could lead to as well.
Before we close, and by the way, Derek, I can tell I have a pretty good sniff and nose myself for geologists that do the right kind of work and what that leads to. And so I think you're doing a fantastic job with the evolution of this project that's happening really rapidly. And keep up the great work, Derek. I'm quite impressed.
Thank you. We've got a great team, and I think that's the key thing, is we've got a good mix of kind of younger, energetic guys that can get out there and pound the rocks, and then we've got some good people on the board that offer some really great insight just in terms of, you know, kind of the big picture things. So I feel fortunate to be part of this team, and you know, this has been a fun project to see how it's advancing.
And Brandon, I wanted to close and talk to you a little bit about the gold and the copper business. Um, I, um, I'm hugely bullish on copper. Uh, the, you know, the demands that are coming and the supply problems.
Mhm.
You know, we just got a little hint of the long-term supply problems when the Panama Cobre mine was shut down, which represented about 1% of the copper production. And it had a dramatic bullish effect on the price of copper. But I don't think people really realize how weak the supply chain is of copper and how many new mines are needed. And I'm hugely bullish on copper exploration, but finding good copper exploration stories is challenging. Can you address some of that commentary there, Brandon?
Yeah, I think copper is very fundamental based from a supply demand standpoint. I think everybody can forecast that even in a low or modest growth scenario globally, there will be a deficit. I think the thing with these copper projects specifically, they're not like a light switch. You cannot just turn it on and add production quickly. Of course, there's always brownfield expansions, but even in a low growth scenario, we're talking about potentially a 4 million ton deficit, 4 to 5 million tons over the coming years. I mean, just rough math, that's, 20 to 30 mines, depending on the size and scale that are coming online at, let's say, 100 to 150,000 tons per year of production, which are not small mines. That is very large. So I think that is a clear trend being spotted. And I think the beauty with Zeus and obviously the success that Hercules has is the fact that it's domestic potential copper supply. And of course, these projects will have many, many years of development in front of them. But I think a lot of countries are actually looking internally now to figure out how to more rapidly advance their own internal copper supply because they know it's such a critical strategic metal. So I think copper, we are all looking at a very bullish cycle for the next period. And when you look at the undeveloped copper projects out there, there's just not that many that have the quality and scale to be added that could bridge that gap to where the demand globally is. So
So
copper, very bullish, of course.
a couple things you bring up there is the industry needs a lot more copper exploration. And the second thing you brought up is those projections of the deficit that's coming over the next 5 to 10 years, you know, they are already out of date. And what I mean by that is coming out of basically nowhere is this artificial intelligence. And those are an energy pig, if you will, that they need tremendous amounts of energy. And whenever you're talking about energy, copper is crucial in that whole situation. So some of those projections of deficit are already outdated. And then you look at the pipeline of exploration and new development, it can't meet the out-of-date projections going forward. So, I think copper is going a lot higher, and it will generate more interest to copper exploration and development.
Definitely, could not agree more.
And what do you think about gold? I love gold. I think that the world, due to the death spiral of debt and the costs of servicing that debt and the in lack of responsible spending by governments, it's going to cause a situation where we have to go back to a gold standard. And so what are your thoughts on gold? Because you got both covered, copper and gold, Brandon.
Yeah, I think the gold complex is also very positive. I'd say it trades more like a fiat currency or an asset class versus the whole supply demand. But as we've seen over recent years, there's been a lot of net buying from central banks, and I think that's by design. And I don't think that stops. So I do think it's a very bullish complex. Demand and supply are still important for gold, but I think a lot of it still gets back to, as you said, the debt super cycle, the lack of trust in global central banks, and where else do you have the safe haven qualities like you have in gold? It's not something that can be manufactured. There's a finite supply. It tends to be a great proxy of where things are from an inflation standpoint, and it's a great protection of wealth. So everybody's portfolio should have gold in it. Of course, there's gold bugs who want more of it, but no matter who you are as a financial manager or individual person who invests, gold needs to be a part of your portfolio, and gold companies need to as well. So I think it's a very strong asset class to be in. And I think we're at the start or the first or second inning maybe of another 5 to 10 year super cycle, which frankly we've been waiting for. I don't think it's there yet, but I think it's coming. And I think when that happens, we will see new all-time highs very, very quickly. And that's when a lot of these assets and companies will start to have those multiple X re-rates that I think a lot of investors have been looking for, specifically in the junior space.
I actually think that the setup now is better than it was in the late 1990s and prior to the 2001 to 2011 bull market. You know, the big copper deficit, the need for, and early in my career, a mine might have taken 5 years to get developed if you found it. Now it's 10 to 20 years. So you can look out into the demand and get an idea, and then you can look at the supply, and some of these things aren't going to get turned on quick enough. So I think that we could be looking for a long-term bull market in gold, copper, silver, plenty of commodities that just haven't been explored for enough. And not enough projects in the development stage, and you got all this demand going forward. It's quite a remarkable situation.
Could not agree more. I think we're in for an exciting next 5 to 10 years.
Awesome. I'll get you to knock off the share screen there, Brandon, and I'll close it up. So can you guys give us a little bit of idea of what's in the immediate horizon over the next month or two?
Yeah, I think continuing the field work at Zeus is a key part of our work programs. So we're obviously commencing that soil sampling program, which is going to be a key proxy of how we then focus on the drill targeting, and then getting established for some of the geophysical or IP surveys as well. So I think all of that culminates in the next kind of, call it 6 to 8 weeks, and then I think we'll have a very good handle on drill targeting and drill targets at that point. And the nice part there is we're still in the middle of summer, that we will have the ability, and we didn't touch on this, but because of our land tenure situation, we actually have patented mining claims, and a lot of our ground is still federal BLM. And we have a very good handle on that permitting process, and a couple of our targets look to be on that land tenure situation. So we will potentially be able to get in there and start drilling this year, if we so decide to. So I think everything's leading in that direction. And then we can't forget about the gold assets, Allan. I think, as you touched on, Nutmeg Mountain, which is next door, effectively 30 kilometers away. We put that really nice 1.3 million ounce heap leach resource out on it last year, near surface. But really, there's more near surface potential, but then there's that potential high grade feeder structure that will definitely be drilled by us in the foreseeable future. And then Limo Butte in Nevada, which we're waiting on a very important plan of operations permit. That plan of operations permit will allow up to 200 acres of this disturbance, and we're expecting that in the next 60 to 75 days, plus or minus. So everything is moving. I think there's a lot of positive updates portfolio wide, and it's going to be a very exciting and active year for us. But the next little bit will be a bit of a focus on Zeus and getting everything ready and driving toward drill targets there, just because we definitely think we have a bit of a tiger of the tail here.
Well, Nutmeg Mountain really excites me because I understand the zonation of grade in an epithermal vein system. And to get the grades that you guys have in the oxide zone above the boiling zone of an epithermal vein is quite spectacular. And that can give you an indication of what you can look for in the boiling zone of an epithermal vein system, because you're way above the boiling zone. And yet the grade is still there, quite high, and so that gives you an indicator of what is in the vein below that caused that mineralization.
Exactly.
So, you know, one of the reasons that I'm so happy that you joined my sponsorship program, Brandon, is a combination of I see you guys doing great work, and that you want to get the story out there, and that you're eager to tell it as it evolves. First, we talked about acquiring the new ground. Now we've talked about the reasoning and what work you've been able to do. I'm looking forward to two things you mentioned, that more property-wide sampling. I think that'll light up some exciting stuff. And then the geophysical work you're doing. I'm really stoked about seeing that. So even before you would start drilling, we can have a couple more interviews talking about the work you're doing. So I really appreciate that you guys get the importance of telling your story in this kind of a format, and following it up with great work.
No, appreciate that. And I think there's going to be a few more updates that come in between then and now, Alan. So it should be a pretty active next couple of weeks for us.
Well, I really enjoyed talking to both Derek and Brandon, and I think that this kind of evolution of the project is going to continue. Derek mentioned something that I always like to hear, that, you know, big systems, they leave big footprints. And you've already got the signs that there's a big footprint there.
Exactly.
All right, gents. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to close it off and we can have a chat at the other end.
Perfect. Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks, Allan.
there you go, folks. Hercules Metals, formerly Hercules Silver, has made a big bang in the exploration copper porphyry discovery world, that has caught a lot of people's attention. Barrick and Rio and all these companies are now in there staking up ground. NevGold was able to be a leader in that staking rush, because they had people there from the work that they were doing at Nutmeg, so they were able to hit the ground running and get key ground. And now they're starting that work of preparing to get drilling ready. And I'm really liking what I see so far, and I think that they're going to have quite an exciting project here. And as Brandon mentioned, they've got the Nutmeg resource of about 1.25 million open pit ounces in an oxide system, with the potential to go below that. They've got the project in Nevada. So Brandon didn't mention it, but that's sort of his expertise in his experience. He used to work for Gold Corp, and that was part of his job, was to acquire good projects that meet the litmus test, if you will, for a big company like Gold Corp. So they're kind of operating like a Gold Corp when they acquire projects, and they've done a great job of doing that. So as always, my shows are for information purposes only. Do your homework, speak with your financial advisors. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.